Hey there, Jake here from CVP. With the release of the Sony FX5 and some pricing changes of some of Sony's other cameras, I want to take a look through a few of the FX range and explore the differences to help you decide on which camera you may want to buy or rent for your next project. Let's get into it. Let's start off looking at the FX2 and FX3. These both share a decent amount but are quite different cameras. The FX2 is priced at £2,649 or €3,725 with the XLR handle, and is a little bit cheaper if you don't want the handle. But I think it is worth grabbing for the small £150 difference in price. The FX3 is a good chunk more at £3,540 or €4,343, but of course it is considered the higher tier camera. The FX2 is definitely still a video leaning camera, but I think it's actually a great stills camera as well. It's essentially an A7C II alongside all the video features that it has as well. While the FX3 can be used as a stills camera as well, I do think the FX2 is a better overall photography camera because of its increased resolution and of course its lovely built-in viewfinder. This built-in viewfinder is great and can be tilted from 0 degrees to 90 up from the body. For anyone shooting in brighter conditions, it genuinely is very useful and a pleasure to use. The FX3 doesn't have a viewfinder, it just has the standard rear LCD, but this is higher in resolution than the FX2 one. The sensors inside of the FX2 and FX3 are pretty different. The FX2 uses the same 33 megapixel sensor used in the A7 IV. It can produce nice detailed imagery as it's downsampling roughly 7K's worth of the sensor in full frame and 4.8K in the Super 35 mode. The FX3 doesn't have a 4K Super 35 mode, but you can use clear image zoom in 4K to crop a little bit. Though this does have limitations, or you can shoot in 1080p where you can enable an APS-C or Super 35 crop. The video out of the FX2 looks really nice, and it's definitely a step up in resolution over the FX3, but the FX3's lower resolution gives it several advantages over the FX2. The FX3 uses the legendary 12 megapixel sensor used across loads of Sony's cameras now, which means it has fantastic low light performance, higher frame rate options, and a faster sensor readout speed. The FX3 is renowned for its low light performance, and while the FX2 is no slouch, the FX3 is better. This is partly thanks to its higher second base ISO of 12,800 compared to the 4,000 of the FX2. This will make it great in so many situations where you can't control the light, such as weddings, events, live music, and loads more. Another big difference between the FX2 and FX3 is their sensor readout speed. The FX2 has a much slower readout speed of roughly 27 milliseconds, whereas the FX3 is much faster at roughly 8.7 milliseconds. This means you'll get far less rolling shutter artifacts compared to the FX2. This is one of the big reasons why the FX3 has done so well over the years. This difference in readout speed also means that their maximum frame rates are quite different as well. The FX3 can capture 4K full frame up to 120 frames per second with no crop, whereas the FX2 tops out in its full frame mode at 30 frames per second in 4K. And you can only do 4K 60 in its Super 35 crop mode. This is one area where the FX3 is much better again, and a pretty big reason to grab it over the FX2 for some creatives. While both have good autofocus, the FX2 has a more modern system compared to the FX3. It has more focus points and an AI processing chip that the FX3 doesn't have, which means it is better at recognizing subjects in the frame and has specific tracking modes the FX3 doesn't have. The FX3 is still good, but it isn't as sticky as the FX2. The FX2 also has improved stabilization over the FX3. It features Sony's dynamic active stabilization, which the FX3 doesn't have. Like the regular active mode, this crops into the field of view of your image to provide extra stabilization power over the regular steady shot mode. Both cameras can take the same optional XLR handle for 2 extra channels of audio recording, XLR inputs, and improved audio control. The FX3 comes with this handle out of the box, but the FX2 is available body only or with the XLR handle. The XLR bundle for the FX2 is only £150 more than the body only variant currently, so in my opinion this is definitely worth grabbing if you're ever going to want it, as it's much more expensive to buy separately after the fact. These cameras do share quite a good amount though. They both use the same battery, though the FX2 has slightly lower average power draw, which should result in better battery life. They also share the same recording media. Both have dual card slots, but the FX2 only has one slot that can use CF Express Type A or SD, whereas both the FX3 slots can take either. They're pretty similar in physical design, but there are some differences. The button layout is actually quite different. Personally, I think the FX2's layout is better overall, especially the addition of the photo-video switch on the body, which the FX3 doesn't have. The grip on the FX2 is also a bit more substantial, and it has 2 1/4-inch threads on the bottom, whereas the FX3 only has 1. But the FX3 has more threads across the rest of its body for mounting accessories. Both of these cameras are great in their own ways. The FX2 is an excellent hybrid camera with great video and photography performance, and it has a lot of Sony's modern upgrades that the FX3 doesn't have. And I do think the FX2 is physically a better camera to use than the FX3. But the FX3 still has a lot about it that makes it a more professionally focused video camera. Its high frame rate options, excellent readout speed, and high ISO performance make it such an incredibly versatile camera. And it carries a prestige with it now thanks to its incredible popularity over the past few years. But how does it compare to Sony's brand new FX5? If you want to keep up with the latest and greatest kit, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And if you want to buy anything you see in this video, or want to get your hands on any of the cameras in this video, here in the UK or across Europe, head over to cvp.com where our experienced team is waiting to help you. The FX5 is £4,699 or €5,400 for the body only, or £5,199 or €6,000 with the new XLR handle. So it is a good bit more than the FX3, but they are roughly in the same price bracket. And I'm sure there are plenty of FX3 users out there looking at potentially upgrading. The FX3 and FX5 share a good amount of their DNA, but they're actually pretty different cameras. The FX5 has a bunch of improvements over the FX3 that come in part thanks to the addition of the AI chip and improved processing inside. This includes improved autofocus performance, which is fantastic, additional subject detection modes, and improved stabilization and dynamic active mode, which we discussed in the FX2 comparison earlier. The FX5 is clearly the first in the next generation of FX cameras, and this means that it features some pretty big upgrades over the FX3. First off, the sensor. The FX5 uses a new 5K or 16.6 megapixel stacked sensor. This is a nice upgrade over the FX3 when it comes to resolution, but I think it's still low resolution enough to have nice large pixels and other fantastic qualities. Like the FX3, the FX5 sensor has a very fast readout speed. The FX5 in 5K 60x9 has a readout time of roughly 5.5 milliseconds, which is about 3 milliseconds faster than the FX3 and the FX6. The FX3 and 6 were already well regarded for their performance here, and the FX5 is even better. It's a small difference, but will mean it's harder to see roller shutter artifacts than the FX3 in extreme scenarios, and partly why it can capture such high frame rates as well. At release, the FX5 will be able to capture a certain set of frame rates, but there will be a firmware upgrade that will unlock some seriously impressive options as well. Here's a list of the max frame rates currently, and in the future firmware as well. Compared to the FX3, the FX5 will be a serious upgrade once this firmware hits, as you'll be able to shoot 5K open gate up to 120 frames per second, and 4K up to 240, which is double what the FX3 can do. The high frame rate footage looks great out of the FX5, especially in RAW, which is another big upgrade over the FX3. The FX5 has a brand new range of recording modes compared to the FX3. The FX3 can shoot a few different versions of XAVC, which are great, but the FX5 has a bunch of options to choose from, including the 3 flavors of XAVC the FX3 can shoot, but a few more, including a 10-bit long GOP, which is a really great addition. However, one of the big features of the FX5 is its ability to record in XOCN RAW internally. This is a great addition that allows the FX5 to capture some really nice imagery that you can really push and pull in post. It's great that you have the option for both a nice compressed XAVC and then decently low data rate XOCN when you want to pull the best image quality possible out of the camera. This is a big step up from the FX3. XOCN is also 16-bit, which means you're capturing much more color information than you will in the 10-bit modes in the FX3. The FX5 has far more sensor mode options than the FX3, and this is partly because of the addition of the different codec options that we've just spoken about that the FX3 doesn't have. This includes full frame 5K modes, different full frame crop modes, and a Super 35 mode in XAVC, though this isn't quite 4K, so can only be recorded in 1080p. Here's a chart of the different modes. The FX3 is much simpler. It still has a Super 35 mode, but not as many different full frame modes as the FX5. One big addition to the FX5 that the FX3 doesn't have is the ability to capture the full 3x2 open gate of the sensor. This is great for anamorphic acquisition, 3x2 delivery, and of course, dual capturing of 9x16 and 60x9 frames. It's great to finally see this in an FX series camera, and it's something that the FX6 also can't do. Sony cameras are generally great when it comes to low light performance, and the FX5 is an upgrade here too. It performs equally as well as the FX3 in extreme low light, but you have much more customization around noise generally. You can tweak the in-camera noise reduction in both XOCN and XAVC, whereas the FX3 you cannot. This means you can control your image much more precisely, which is great. The FX5 also has 3 base ISOs. You have 800 and 12,800 like the FX3, but also 4000, which is a really nice middle ground for scenarios where the other two might not work. Both cameras share similar shooting modes like Cine EI, Cine EI Quick, but the flexible ISO mode is a little different. In the FX3, the camera will switch ISOs in the background as you go up and down the ISO, whereas the FX5 doesn't and requires you to switch between the base ISOs manually as you go up and down ISO. You can bind this base ISO change to a button, which does make this a bit easier, but if you're an FX3 user coming over to the FX5, this is worth knowing. The FX5 features a new dual gain function, which essentially unlocks an extra stop and a bit's worth more dynamic range. It does this by combining 2 different sensitivities to give you much cleaner shadows. There are trade-offs to this mode, but in the right scene, it can deliver excellent results, and isn't something that the FX3 can do. Some of the images I've managed to capture in this mode are incredibly impressive. Both cameras can capture audio really well, but the way the FX5 handles it is a little bit different. The FX5 has a new handle that's been updated in a range of ways, including updates to the mounting points. When using this new handle with the FX5, you now have the ability to record 32-bit float audio, which is a great addition. You can also control the audio differently on the handle and also in the camera using the different menu. They both capture good quality audio though, but the FX5 system is a little bit better overall, and 32-bit float is awesome. Physically, they look pretty similar, but there are actually some clear differences between them. The FX5 feels more substantial than the FX3, but is only a touch larger and heavier. The overall button layout is actually quite different as well. The FX3 is a more traditional mirrorless style layout, whereas the FX5's is less so. This is partly because of the addition of the larger 16:9 screen on the FX5, which is a really nice change. However, if you are used to a mirrorless style system with 3 dials for control, the FX5 will take some getting used to, as it only has 2 dials and no wheel on the back like the FX3 and the FX2. This new screen on the FX5 though is great. It's bright and features the modern Sony hinge design, which means you can flip and tilt it much nicer than the FX3 screen. The cameras also have quite different inputs and outputs. The FX5 has the newer design with no covers on the headphone or mic input, and a couple of new ports as well, including a full-size Ethernet, which will make for some really unique workflows that the FX3 won't be able to do out of the box. The FX5 also uses Sony's new NPSA 100 battery, which is larger and smarter than the one used in the FX3, though it does mean that if you're upgrading from a previous Alpha or FX camera, you will have to also upgrade your batteries. The battery life is a little bit better with the FX5 compared to the FX3, but both are great overall. The FX3 uses a menu system similar to Alpha series cameras, whereas the FX5 now uses a system closer to Sony's larger cinema line cameras like the FX6 and Burano. There's some customization to both of these menus, but overall they're actually pretty rigid with their layouts. In the FX3, you can customize the FN menu, and you have the main menu, which has a lot of key shooting settings on the first layer of the menu. Compared to the FX5, you can actually customize the user page here, which is effectively the FN menu, and then you have obviously the multi-layer of the menu system itself. Which you prefer will be personal preference, but I find both easy enough to use. However, my preference would sit with the FX5. I really like the dual layer menu system that the FX5 has. Both feature the Big 6 menu as well, which is really good in certain shooting environments. In the deeper menus, they do share quite a bit, but there are some functions that one will have over the other. For example, the FX5 has false color, more in-camera D-squeeze options, better HDMI output settings and restrictions, granular shutter speed control, faster zebra level switching, whereas the FX3 has memory recall modes, which make switching settings really quick, a better custom white balance function, and I do like the center level option you have as well. What system you may prefer using will completely depend on how you like shooting, but both have different pros and cons. I would say currently the Alpha Series menu will be better for most run and gun operators. I think the FX5 can be used as such, but there are a few limitations currently that do make it a touch slower to use like that, especially for people used to how the FX3 style menu works. However, the menu in the FX5 is far more tailored for video shooting, and once set up is really nice to use. It will also be good for people using an FX5 alongside the FX6, Burano or Venice, as they are all very similar operationally. As the FX5 is being positioned truly as a cinema and video camera, it doesn't have a photo mode like the FX3. For people who need to switch between taking photos and video, this is obviously quite a big difference. Sony are going to be adding a grab function to the FX5, but this isn't going to be a photo mode. So yeah, the FX5 does have some serious differences over the FX3, and it will be a great upgrade for loads of creatives. If you're coming from an FX3 or another camera running the Alpha style menus, you will need to get used to the operational differences between them. However, the image quality upgrade is substantial, especially when using the dual game mode and XOCN, which are both fantastic additions. But it is a good bit more expensive, and the FX3 is still a brilliant camera, and potentially could make more sense for certain people not needing the FX5's upgrades, or if you just prefer the way the FX3 operates. So, how does the FX5 compare to the FX6? Well, the FX6 is £5,220 or €6,100, which makes the FX5 and FX6 very closely priced to each other. But I think they are very different cameras. When it comes to image quality, I think the FX5 does edge it out because of the new sensor and technology it has inside. It has improved color, better internal recording options, higher frame rates, basically the same differences that we've spoken about with the FX3. The big difference between these two cameras is really their usability. They are very different cameras to actually use physically. They obviously have very different body designs. The FX5 is obviously much smaller, which could be seen as a positive or a negative. It can go onto gimbals much easier, can be a more discreet package overall, and potentially be better for longer shooting periods as it's lighter. However, the FX6 is a video camera through and through, and the larger boxy design means, for me anyway, it's much nicer for shooting video. You have much more buttons and control, and if you're used to shooting with large production cameras like this, you'll be able to operate it so much faster than an FX5. Compared to the pretty limited set of buttons and controls on the FX5, the FX6 looks crammed with buttons, and this does make it much faster to operate, especially with the fantastic grip that comes with the camera. This is brilliant to use in a range of different ways. The top handle is also a much nicer one compared to the FX5. It's more substantial and feels far better in the hand, and also has better control overall. The FX6 is incredibly versatile. It can be used handheld, easily configured for shoulder use, rigged up for larger cinema-style workflows, or completely stripped back for gimbal use. There is also a difference in client perception when you walk onto a job with an FX6 instead of a small mirrorless camera. As stupid as it sounds, it is a thing that I've personally experienced and spoken to other filmmakers, videographers, and camera operators about. One of the biggest reasons why the FX6 is still so popular today, and why you could choose it over the FX5, has to be the electronic variable ND system. Having an internal ND filter is so incredibly handy, and the system in the FX6 is brilliant. Because it's a variable electronic system, you can control the ND very precisely, or in regular stops as you would with a normal system. It also has an auto ND mode, which is fantastic for run and gun documentary filmmakers in unpredictable environments. This honestly makes the FX6 fantastic to use in so many scenarios and saves you having to stress controlling some kind of third-party ND system, which you will have to use with the FX5. This paired with the overall form factor of the FX6 makes it great to just pull out of a bag and start shooting straight away without needing to bolt on anything extra, which you may need to do with smaller camera systems. It also means there's less points of failure on your rig, which again is something to consider. The FX6 has way more inputs and outputs than the FX5. It has a full-size HDMI, SDI out, BNC for timecode, 2.5mm remote port, multi-micro USB, and an input for power. This is a much more professionally focused set of options compared to the FX5. SDI and a BNC for timecode is really great and a must for so many productions that require reliable professional connections and sync. This will often be a reason why a certain production would ask for an FX6 over something like an FX3. The FX6 also uses Sony's excellent BPU style batteries. These can be nice and compact in the body if you use something like the BPU35, but you can easily use much larger BPUs or adapt it out nicely to something like V-Lock, which can work really well on the FX6. This means you can easily use a battery or two and run for a long time. You can also get BPU batteries with power outputs, so you can power your accessories like a video transmitter or monitor using the camera battery itself, whereas the FX5 uses a much smaller battery, which you won't be able to power accessories from and will also last less time than the ones in the FX6. But the FX5 has a bunch that is actually better than the FX6. It has sensor stabilization, whereas the FX6 doesn't have any at all. It can shoot a range of XAVC and capture internal XOCN RAW, whereas the FX6 can only output RAW. It will have better high frame rate options eventually once the planned future firmware comes out. It has triple bass ISO, whereas the FX6 is limited to just 2. It can capture 32-bit float audio and has an audio input on the body itself, whereas the FX6 requires its handle to be attached to run audio into it. And the FX5 has the new dual gain mode, which can produce excellent results. The FX6 uses the same sensor inside the FX3, so the image quality is quite close, though slightly different. This means that the FX5 is a step up in image quality compared to the FX6. We can see a similar difference in image like we could with the FX3, and that's not surprising given the FX5's improved sensor, color performance, and recording options. But the FX6 has plenty of reasons to still grab it over the FX5. It really depends on the workflow the camera is going into and what's most important to you. For me, the FX6 still has clear differences that make it a better camera, more tailored for particular production needs, broadcast and documentary filmmakers. It's all about the usability of it, its professionally focused features, and the prestige this camera still has. It can still capture great looking images and does so quickly and effectively. The FX6 is still an incredibly versatile workhorse, but the FX5 does beat it when it comes to recording formats, autofocus, stabilization, audio options, and overall sensor technology and image quality. We contemplated including an FX6 and FX9 comparison here, but we've actually compared these two in a previous video. So if you want to learn about the difference between them, please check that video out. This is actually quite interesting to think about now, as the FX9 can be purchased used for around the same price as a new FX6 or FX5, and it could be a good option for some people. Anyway, I hope this video has helped you understand the differences between these different Sony FX cameras. It's great to have so many fantastic options to choose from now, but which kit is right for you will depend on what you need, and we can help you create the perfect package for your needs. If you want to come in and test these cameras out for yourself, you can book an appointment at our UK or European showrooms where you can get your hands on and test the cameras, rig them up, and check out some lenses with one of our knowledgeable technical consultants. If you want to book an appointment, drop demo@cvp.com and email. Let us know if you have any other questions about these cameras in the comments, and if you like the video, please give it a like and maybe consider subscribing so you don't miss out on our awesome upcoming content. And thank you so much for watching.